Even Walmart is pulling back, and that alone says something about where America is headed. For decades, the chain was a constant. The lights that never went out, the aisles that stayed stocked no matter how rough the economy got. But this year across 7 states, those lights are dimming, clinics have closed, stores have gone dark, and the towns that built their weekends, their paychecks, and sometimes even their healthcare around that blue and yellow sign are now left wondering what went wrong. This isn't about a company tightening budgets. It's about what happens when the country's most dependable anchor starts to drift, and the places tied to it start to feel the pull. From Washington to California, we'll trace what these cutbacks reveal about the quiet fractures running through America's retail map, and how some communities are already learning to rebuild from the empty parking lots Walmart left behind. Number 1. Washington, a 2025 closure right now. The doors in Federal Way are still open for now, but the closing date is already printed October 31st, 2025. A few days left. The countdown is public. The shelves are full, the lights are bright, and yet everyone walking in already knows they're walking toward the end. Walmart confirmed the closure months in advance, a rare move and a cold one. About 250 employees will be affected. Most have been offered transfers, some won't take them. The company said the same words it always says: store performance and strategic alignment. But here's what that really means: the numbers no longer justify the rent, and the foot traffic no longer fits the forecast. The math says go, even if the people say stay. Already, the store feels like a place living on borrowed time. Cashiers whisper about transfer lists between shifts. Managers who once planned seasonal displays now track headcounts. Even the PA announcements sound different, a little too cheerful, a little too final. Aisles are stocked but not restocked as often. You can feel the end under the surface humming like a freezer about to shut down. For the locals, that hum hits differently. Federal Way isn't a city of luxury malls. It's a working corridor between Tacoma and Seattle, dense, diverse, and dependent on this one-stop store. Walmart here isn't just cheap, it's reachable. For families balancing multiple jobs, this store is the reliable stop between paychecks. And when reliability dies, something deeper goes with it. Stability, rhythm, convenience that made life possible. Even now, customers keep coming. Some out of habit, some out of disbelief. They've said stuff like this before. One man said near the produce section, maybe they'll change their mind, but they won't. Because in Bentonville, the decision's already carved into the quarter. The lease will end. The lights will go out. And it's not just about one store, it's about what the early closure reveals: a company shifting from physical space to digital reach, trading parking lots for data servers. That's not strategy. That's a pivot away from the people who made those aisles matter. Still, this one hurts because it's slow. There's no shock, no surprise, just a year-long goodbye. Employees are packing boxes while still ringing up customers. The store manager, 29 years with Walmart, says she's mentally rehearsing the last shift. You can feel it in her tone, half gratitude, half exhaustion. Even the surrounding businesses can sense the timer. The coffee shop next door is debating whether to renew its lease. The tire shop 2 lots over is cutting hours. The entire block feels suspended, not dead, not alive, just waiting for a date circled in red on the corporate calendar. By the time next Halloween rolls around, this parking lot will be empty. The sign will come down, and another American town will lose a light it thought would never fade. Some endings come fast. This one comes slow enough for everyone to watch it happen. One shift, one customer, one day at a time. Number 2, Florida. Florida is where Walmart Health went dark. The last patient stepped into the dusk, and for the first time in years, the clinic light stayed off. No ribbon, no speeches, just a taped note on the glass closed as of today. Inside, disinfectant hung in the air while the supermarket music faded into a hum. In early 2024, Walmart shut down all 23 Walmart health centers across Florida. These rooms were more than add-ons beside the pharmacy. They were small lifelines that offered primary care dental visits, counseling sessions, and quick walk-ins for families who could not carry the cost or the weight elsewhere. The company's reason sounded clinical operating expenses outpaced reimbursement. Beneath that language was something more human, a retreat from a promise that once felt local and steady. Moreover, Florida was not a footnote in the experiment. It was the proof of concept market: retirees on fixed incomes, workers juggling shifts, neighborhoods where the supercenter already functioned as a town square. Appointment slots filled, but margins thinned. Insurance payments lagged. Staff hours bent to spreadsheets. The lights flickered long before they finally went out. Still, what disappeared with those clinics was not just convenience, it was trust. People had arranged their weeks around that hallway. Groceries here, a refill there, a blood pressure check on the way out. No prestige, just proximity care folded into an errand list that felt possible. Take Ocala. Maria and Thomas Ruiz, both in their 70s, used to make one Friday run. She handled the cart. He handled his blood sugar check. We could do everything in one trip, Maria said. Then one week they told us the clinic was gone. Now they drive nearly 40 minutes to a private office that charges twice as much. Their daughter orders prescriptions online, but routine does not translate to a screen. We do not want an app, Thomas said. We want people. Even here in the state that sells sunshine and service, the closures exposed a fragile balance. Retail convenience had blurred into a public service. When the company stepped back, a quiet vacuum opened. County clinics took on a surge. Pharmacy lines stretched. Retired nurses returned part-time to help nonprofits stitch together a stopgap. Yet the deeper unease sits underneath the headlines. The pullback was not a stumble, it was a strategy. It showed that even the largest operator cannot outrun care that costs more every quarter. And if Walmart with its scale and logistics could not keep affordable care inside a store that sells nearly everything else, what chance does a small practice have when rent, payroll, and claims move the wrong way? For thousands across Florida, a closed door now becomes distance. More highway miles, more fuel, more missed appointments. For an older neighbor with a bad knee, 3 extra exits can turn early treatment into a late night at urgent care. For a single parent, a longer line means another shift swapped and another paycheck strained. Beneath that, something else is starting. Independent clinics are taking over empty suites. A few supercenter managers are quietly funding ride vouchers for former patients. County health teams in places like Pensacola and Lakeland are pushing outreach deeper into neighborhoods that once leaned on the blue and yellow sign. It is not glossy. It is not fast. It is how communities regroup when the anchor drifts. Even here, resilience does not erase the lesson. The state can adapt, but it cannot forget how quickly a private model unspooled when the math no longer worked. That memory matters because it shapes what replaces the gap, whether it is a cooperative clinic, a county partnership, or another chain with the same promise and the same risk. For Florida, the question is not whether Walmart returns to healthcare. The question is whether the silence it left can be filled by something steadier than a business line item. Because when the clinic lights go out, the distance between care and convenience grows wider than anyone expected. Number 3, Georgia promises paused. Same as Florida, Georgia had to watch its Walmart clinics close, but those moves tell a very different story. In total, 17 Walmart health centers across the state shut their doors in early 2024, marking the end of the very pilot program that started here 5 years earlier. Here, the loss isn't about lights going out overnight. It's about an experiment that began with ambition and ended mid-sentence. Georgia was the starting line of Walmart Health. The pilot meant to prove that primary care could fit between the checkout lanes and the pharmacy counter. When the first site opened in Dallas, Georgia in 2019, it was hailed as the future of affordable medicine in small-town America. By 2024, the signs were taken down, the rooms cleared, and the optimism quietly boxed away. Once the plan was rapid expansion, clinics would spread across rural and suburban Georgia, offering lab tests, dental care, and therapy under one roof. However, by contrast, the arithmetic turned cruel. Reimbursement rates lagged, staffing costs climbed, and insurance billing delays drained the margins. In turn, the retreat arrived without drama. No headlines, no outrage, only quiet transfers, closed schedules, and a corporate press note that read, "This model is no longer sustainable." For the employees, the shift meant more than moving jobs. It meant rewriting lives. Nurse practitioners and assistants who had joined Walmart's pilot moved to county health departments or regional hospitals, some driving an hour farther for less flexibility. "We built trust fast," said Alicia Grant, a nurse from Douglas County. "People like seeing a familiar face in a familiar store." Then one morning it was over. After all, patients do not wait for balance sheets to settle. Families felt the loss in smaller ways that never make quarterly reports. In towns like Hiram and Rome, parents had folded those clinics into their errands. Groceries, refills, a child's quick exam, all in one stop. Now the same routine takes 2 trips, double the gas, and a half day off work. What once fit into a lunch break has become a logistical maze. Still, Georgia's story is not one of collapse. It is one of interruption. Community clinics have begun taking over vacant Walmart health spaces, some even hiring former staff. One in Cobb County reopened as a cooperative practice, the same walls, different name, same local nurse behind the counter. For patients, that continuity softens the blow, turning corporate withdrawal into a quiet handoff. By contrast with Florida's feeling of finality, Georgia's chapter remains suspended, as if the blueprint never got erased, only smudged. Many who worked there still believe the idea was sound, just executed too fast, too broadly, too soon. It wasn't failure, Alicia said. It was running out of runway. For Georgia, the lesson sits between optimism and exhaustion. Innovation met reality, and reality won for now. Because when a pilot program ends mid-air, it doesn't disappear. It drifts, waiting for someone steadier to take the controls and finish the flight. Number 4, Texas expansion to reversal. Texas was the growth story until it wasn't. 18 new Walmart health centers were already in planning. 4 were open, and corporate filings showed another wave of leases under negotiation. Then, in less than 3 weeks, everything stopped. Construction paused, contracts were nullified, and the same press office that had promised national expansion issued a quiet correction. The anchor facts tell a story no spreadsheet could. In early 2024, Walmart had earmarked millions for a second phase rollout across Texas, backed by newly recruited physicians and a projected 5-year return horizon. Less than a month later, those capital allocations vanished from quarterly disclosures. Analysts flagged an internal reprioritization of healthcare investment, but the footnotes hinted at something bigger, a systemic pullback designed to preserve liquidity and preempt shareholder skepticism. Initially, the announcement looked like overcaution. Then experts started connecting dots. The company had spent 2 years testing a care delivery model that relied on narrow insurance margins and local physician partnerships. Yet Texas presented an obstacle invisible to casual observers: payer fragmentation. Medicaid reimbursement rates sat well below projected cost recovery, and private insurers offered inconsistent billing cycles. Structurally, the entire model depended on fast capital turnover, something incompatible with healthcare's slow revenue rhythm. Meanwhile, operational headwinds were rising. Labor shortages across the Dallas-Fort Worth corridor pushed clinician wages to record highs. Medical equipment inflation outpaced retail cost control. Every appointment required compliance with HIPAA infrastructure that retail stores were never built for. In financial terms, Walmart's healthcare division was fighting a two-front war: rising fixed costs and stagnant reimbursement. Inside the company, the reversal wasn't panic, it was precision. Executives guided by consulting partners and financial risk teams reframed the closures as a strategic realignment language that shields valuation from volatility. A former project manager in Frisco recalled an internal memo that arrived before the public knew: freeze all forward buildouts. Protect core margin exposure. In effect, it was less about failure and more about containment. For observers, the pattern mirrors a corporate self-diagnosis. Big box retailers entering healthcare often underestimate the care delivery cost curve, a gradient that rewards volume only after years of upfront loss. Walmart's exit, though abrupt, avoided what one policy analyst called the long bleed. By retreating early, the company safeguarded its operating margin at a time when competitors like Amazon and Walgreens were absorbing billion-dollar write-downs on similar experiments. Consequently, the clinics that might have served tens of thousands of Texans never opened. The scaffolding stayed up, the signage half-painted. Local contractors were left unpaid for final design stages. Newly hired medical staff received reassignment offers to stores hundreds of miles away. On paper, it read as capital reallocation. In reality, it was a quiet collapse of confidence, a recognition that the healthcare promise conflicted with retail's logic of velocity. Ultimately, Texas exposed the real fault line in Walmart's experiment. Retail margins thrive on repetition. Healthcare margins depend on patience. The two curves crossed and arithmetic won. What began as a rollout became a rollback. leaving behind corridors of half-finished clinics and a question that corporate language can't quite answer: if expansion was the dream. When did the numbers decide to wake up? Number 5. California. When a lease isn't renewed. No healthcare, no clinics in California, Walmart had to retreat in the one thing it always did best selling. And that made the loss sting even more. In February 2024, 2 California stores went dark, one on Imperial Avenue in San Diego, another along Fletcher Parkway in El Cajon. There was no protest, no warning, just a sign that said, "Store closed." The reason sounded harmless enough: the leases had expired and Walmart chose not to renew. But for the people who shop there every week, it didn't feel harmless at all. Each of those stores had been part of the neighborhood for more than 20 years. Parents remembered buying school supplies there. Grandparents remembered walking those same aisles when the kids were small. Officially, the company said the stores underperformed. In plain language, that meant the rent went up, the math stopped working, and the world's biggest retailer decided to cut its losses. For the people left behind, it's not the profit margins they'll remember, it's the drive. The Imperial Avenue store was the only full-service Walmart within city limits, and the next one is nearly 8 miles away. If you don't own a car, that means 2 bus transfers and almost 2 hours each way. A trip for toothpaste and groceries now needs a plan, not a quick stop. When the doors closed, the silence hit fast. The parking lot emptied out. The bakery across the street lost its morning rush. The discount salon next door lost walk-ins who used to stop before errands. Inside, the shelves came down in neat rows, the smell of detergent still hanging in the air. One former cashier said the hardest part wasn't losing her job. It was watching customers pull up weeks later, still not knowing the place was gone. In El Cajon, the story rhymed. For 20 years, the Fletcher Parkway location had been the heartbeat of a working-class neighborhood. Now its glass doors reflect a for-lease banner instead of shoppers. A nearby food vendor said their weekly deliveries dropped by a third after the closure. "We used to unload twice a week," he said. "Now it's once, sometimes none." People who don't live here might shrug stores close all the time, right? But when a big one leaves, it takes gravity with it. Buses change routes, small shops lose traffic. The whole rhythm of a street changes. For families counting on affordable options, that's not business, that's life. Getting harder in quiet ways no chart can measure. Months later, both buildings still stand empty. The blue paint fades a little more each week. Weeds creep through the parking lines. Some say another retailer might move in, but nobody is holding their breath. In cities like San Diego, real estate always wins even when people lose. In California, the decision looked simple on paper: a lease not renewed, a store written off. But to the people who built their days around it, it felt like something larger was being taken away. Not a store, but the center of gravity that once held their neighborhood together. Number 6, Ohio Southside closed. "They told us Friday would be the last day," said a cashier on Columbus's South Side. "We didn't believe it till the lights went out." That Friday came quietly. No countdown, no ceremony. By sunset, the sliding doors locked for good, and a place that had felt permanent suddenly wasn't. For more than 20 years, the Walmart on South High Street had been a landmark, a grocery store, a pharmacy, a first job, and sometimes a refuge. Then in February 2024, it closed. The company said it was a lease issue. On paper, it was underperformance. But on the South Side, business is what kept the lights on after dark. For families who counted on that store for groceries, prescriptions, and the small sense of order it offered, the closure didn't feel like accounting, it felt like abandonment. The South Side is a part of Columbus that never had much margin for error. Many residents don't own cars, most live paycheck to paycheck. The store wasn't fancy, but it was close. You could walk there for milk, pick up a prescription, or cash a check. It was part of the rhythm of the neighborhood, open early, bright at night, familiar faces behind the registers. Now the building sits empty, its windows dark, its parking lot echoing every passing truck. The nearest Walmart is nearly 10 miles away across 2 bus routes that don't align. For someone without a car, that's a 3-hour errand to buy bread. A grandmother named Lillian, who used to walk there twice a week for her medication, now depends on a neighbor to drive her once a month. "It's not the store," she said. "It's what the store meant." We had a place that felt steady, Inside the company's statement, words like real estate optimization appeared. Beyond that, there's a different reality: food deserts. When one major grocer leaves a working-class area, smaller stores rarely step in. Margins are thin, security cost high, and deliveries less frequent. Within 2 months of the closure, nearby corner stores reported a 20% rise in customers, but also in prices. A gallon of milk that cost $4 now sells for $6. Meanwhile, nonprofits and churches are trying to fill the gap. The Southside Settlement House began offering weekly grocery drives in the store's parking lot. A local pastor converted an old van into a mobile pantry, delivering canned goods door to door. Volunteers say the hardest part isn't collecting food, it's convincing people to show up. Many are embarrassed they used to shop where they now receive donations. Beyond that, something harder to measure has changed. The parking lot, once full of headlights, now feels uneasy after dark. A few teenagers skateboard there, but most people pass quickly. Without the steady stream of shoppers, small shops nearby, a hair salon, a thrift store, a dollar mart. See half the foot traffic they used to. A single closed door turned a neighborhood corner into a dead end, and yet resilience always finds its way back in. A group of former employees meets every few weeks to share updates and job leads. One of them, Marcus, who used to manage the overnight shift, says he still drives by the store. "It's strange," he said. "You keep expecting the lights to be on again. You keep expecting the doors to slide open. So far, they haven't. But on weekends, you can still see people gather by the fence when the food trucks arrive. Neighbors greeting neighbors, helping unload boxes, keeping the rhythm alive in their own way. On Columbus's south side, the store is gone. The sign's been stripped, the walls repainted, the shelves removed. But the habit of showing up hasn't left. Because when a neighborhood loses its anchor, sometimes the people decide to become the anchor themselves." Number 7, Illinois. In the end, this is the most serious story. Chicago had to close both its Walmarts and its Hopes in the same breath. In 2023, 4 stores across Chicago's south and west sides shut down. Walmart said they were underperforming, that the losses had doubled in 5 years. But what those words really meant was simpler: the math didn't favor the poor anymore. The stores in Auburn, Gresham, Chatham, Little Village, and Lakeview were meant to bridge the gap between cost and care. Instead, they became proof of what happens when a community's daily needs are controlled by a company that can leave at will. For years, Walmart promised to be part of Chicago's recovery. When the first store opened on the south side, there were ribbon cuttings, job fairs, speeches about investing in overlooked neighborhoods. People believed it. They worked the registers, stocked shelves, and found pride in stability. "We thought this one would stay," said Angela Brooks, a former associate. "They told us we were the model." But the model cracked. Theft rates rose. Logistics costs soared. Supply trucks were rerouted after dark for safety, and slowly the balance sheet turned against the streets it once sought to lift. Then, one April morning, the decision came down: all 4 stores gone. Beyond the numbers, the damage ran deeper. For residents, the closures weren't just inconvenient, they were humiliating. Many had fought for years to bring big retail into their communities, believing it meant recognition. Now they had to explain why the same company that came with smiles and promises left without warning. The grocery aisles that once brought affordable food to the South Side turned dark overnight, leaving entire neighborhoods as food deserts again. But this time it hurt worse because people had tasted what stability felt like. A year later, the buildings still stand. The glass is cloudy. The blue letters fade. At dusk, kids ride their bikes through the empty parking lot, their laughter echoing off the walls that used to hum with late-night checkouts. A woman in her 60s walks by with a grocery cart, pushing it home half empty, the same cart she used to fill here every Friday. She pauses at the gate, stares through the fence, and keeps walking. For her and for thousands like her, the loss isn't about groceries. It's about distance, how far the next store is, how far people have to go just to live an ordinary life. Across years, through closures and corporate promises that faded like paint, the lesson stays the same: when a community's survival depends on someone else's profit. Stability is borrowed time. And in Chicago, that time finally ran out. When the doors close and the lights go dark, something else stays lit: people. Across 7 states through clinics and closures, layoffs, and silence. One truth runs steady, Americans endure. Walmart could leave, downsize, or reinvent itself, but the human will to rebuild never follows its balance sheet. In every town, someone found a way: a church that turned a parking lot into a market, a worker who started a pantry, a community that refused to fade with the sign. Maybe that's the quiet secret of this story. It isn't really about retail at all. It's about resilience, the kind that doesn't need branding slogans or corporate promises. Because the shelves can empty, the buildings can fall quiet, and the logos can change. But the human instinct to begin again, that part, no company has ever managed to close.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.